The member for Newtown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens on the Transport Administration Amendment closure of the railway line at Newcastle Bill 2015, as I have carried on behalf of the Greens for Transport in this place. Our transport spokesperson, Marine Faruqi, in the other place, has made it very clear and has campaigned very hard with the community and with Save Our Rail to oppose the closure of this rail line. The Greens strongly oppose this bill and are completely disturbed by the fact that while the rest of the world appears to be closing motorways and investing in public transport, it seems the New South Wales Government is doing the exact opposite. It is time that we wake up and realise that the Tony Abbott era of roads obsession is over, and we should be seeing more investment in public transport and not the closing of rail lines and the building of more polluting motorways. The government, we know, is bringing on this bill due to the need to pass an Act of Parliament to remove the rail line. And should be noted that the battle over the Newcastle Rail Line has been raging for decades, both with Labor and Liberal governments attempting to remove the rail line at different stages. It is clear that closing the rail line has been in the interest of Hunter developers and due to the prime foreshore land that it currently occupies. It is something that the constituents of Newtown share with the constituents of Newcastle, that the threat of urban growth and the threat of developers' interests over community interests is something that connects us across this state of New South Wales. In answers to questions by my Greens colleague in the other place, Marine Faruqi, tabled in Parliament recently, it was found that public transport patronage has collapsed since the closure of the rail line, that people are unfortunately getting back into their cars, and that the bus network is not providing an alternative solution. Residents are reporting that much of Newcastle is drained of life and traffic and parking is worse, and many of those who need to get to the inner city and the beach are requiring these services are finding it much more difficult. The recent Upper House Committee inquiry into the planning processes in Newcastle and the Hunter strongly advocated for the reinstatement of the rail services. This would possibly be the first time anywhere in the world where a government has been seen to be ripping up the rail lines that connect two of the biggest cities in its jurisdiction. The closure of the rail line would hammer public transport patronage in the Hunter and will do nothing to revitalise the city. The government's 2014 traffic assessment for the Wickham Transport Interchange predicted a huge public transport loss if the heavy rail were to be stopped at Wickham and any future replacement light rail installed. This government is spending $460 million to rip up the public rail network and hand over the rail corridor to developers. Let's just repeat that. They're not spending $460 million investing in new public transport. They are spending $460 million of transport money to rip up an existing rail network and hand it over to developers. It is unbelievable to think in a climate where we need to be addressing environmental issues around pollution caused by motorways and tollways that this government is investing money in ripping up rail lines, not investing money in delivering public transport for the state of New South Wales. And that's where the Greens stand strong with the community. We have stood strong with the Save Our Rail community group, who have actually defended this matter in the court system and seen that the government has finally admitted that they need to bring some scrutiny to this decision by bringing this bill into the Parliament. But what we see is that consistently any attempts by this New South Wales Baird government to show transparency around decisions when it comes to funding polluting tollways or spending money to rip up railways, that there's always a reluctance to be transparent for the reasoning behind it. And we have seen consistently that there has been a failure to deliver to any of the communities that are using this rail line as to how this will benefit them. What we see is basically a commitment to say that this will benefit those that are the developers in the area. It appears to benefit those that are going to be benefiting through the urban growth process, but it's very hard to see how anyone in the community And we're saying parents with prams, we're saying older people, people with disabilities, local businesses that are suffering as a result of people getting in their cars or actually shopping in Sydney rather than in Newcastle. It is hard to see how any of these people in this community are benefiting as a result of this government spending $460 million to rip up a railway line rather than investing that $460 million in public transport. It is clear that many residents of the Hunter area rely on rail to get into Newcastle for work, for shopping and for entertainment. And the closure of this rail line will make that harder and the congestion problems worse. Even if any light rail replacement is ever built, forcing people to change modes of public transport will cripple public transport patronage, and it forces them back onto the roads. The time and financial penalty of forcing people onto the roads and dealing with separate services is of huge concern and will worsen the congestion in Newcastle, as well as not delivering for the people in that community to be able to use safe, effective, accessible and efficient integrated public transport solutions. This is a clear and unambiguous anti-public transport land grab. It is disappointing to see that we are seeing money from the transport budget being spent to rip up a railway line rather than actually delivering public transport for the community. The Greens have stood strong with the Save Our Community, Save Our Rail campaign. We know that Save Our Rail is a strong community campaign, and I was pleased to be able to join them briefly outside of this Parliament yesterday with their action. It is wonderful to see the community coming together, standing up against the government's cuts to rail services and complete disregard for community concerns and access to public transport. It is wonderful to see the local Greens in Newcastle standing strong with community activists and with people across that area. It's great to see that the Newcastle University Student Association has out and supported this rally yesterday and also is supporting the Save Our Rail campaign. And it is wonderful to continue to see the tireless work of public transport advocates like Gavin Gattenby and those involved in Eco-Transit Sydney for supporting this important campaign to ensure that we save Newcastle's rail. But what we need to take a step back and look at is what is going on with the state of transport and roads in this state. We have a situation where we see $460 million in the transport budget being spent to rip up a railway line, and we see $15.4 billion of public money being spent on a 33-kilometre polluting tollway in the middle of the city. I can tell the community in Newcastle that the people in this area, in this community of Sydney where my electorate of Newtown is, and that the Greens across this state stand with you in your campaign to say we should be investing in public transport, we should be investing in rail infrastructure, we should not be investing in polluting tollways and motorways. And what we want to see is world-class public transport, not the closure of the Newcastle Rail.